welcome to another happiness class. This is a weekly thing. Do check out bigquestionsanswered.com to check out previous shows. This week is about peace, and hopefully it's going to be interesting. Like, why? Who cares about peace? That's one thing I'm going to explain. And how do you get inner peace? How do you get outer peace? What's outer peace? Then there's my mate Khalid. Yes, that's my name as well, if you did know, but it's a really good name, isn't it? And where do I get all my ideas from? They're from ancient religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, wherever, mainly Islam, though, for a reason. And it's all science and logic, so you don't have to just believe what I'm saying. Hopefully, what I'm going to say is going to make sense. And do press the like on this thing. So if you like the video and if you believe in what I'm saying, you press the like button. I think YouTube will tell other people about this show, so please do support the show in that way. And let's get going. So I need to copy paste my first slide. Copy. There we go. Paste. There you go. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. I'm going to try to whiz through it. As I say, so the first section is, I call it fulfillment, because I thought, what's another kind of way to explain this word peace? Okay. Because the word peace, and that's actually the meaning of the word Islam, it means a lot of stuff, like inner peace, outer peace, also kind of peace, right? And I thought a good word to explain that would be fulfillment. And I like to pose a question for this whole section to focus on it, which isn't peace a bit of a boring goal for life? Okay, I've heard some guru on the internet kind of make fun of this idea that peace, what's the point of peace? Peace is just a low bar, right? Okay, so I'll talk about that in a bit. And so then I'm going to start from quoting the Holy Quran. Again, as I say, I do mainly quote from Islamic scripture, sometimes from others. But here we go. This day have I perfected your religion for you, that's God talking, and completed my favor upon you, and have chosen for you Islam, which loosely translates to peace, as a religion. There's a quote, and by the way, in the description, there's a whole web page full of all the references and stuff, so you can check that out on the video. And my kind of brief commentary, one extra thing I'm probably going to add is like God has always been helping human beings out, guiding human beings. It makes sense, right? And so the reason why I quote from Islam is just the perfection of that teaching. It's like when we were evolved enough to get the latest teachings, we've got it, right? So that's a quick reason why I refer to Islam so much. But specifically, why am I using this particular verse? So Islam is the perfection of God's guidance. The word Islam means peace, as I said before, where peace means being at one with your true purpose and the deep happiness that results from that, from within you as a result. Okay. So when you're at peace with what you're supposed to be doing, that's what Islam is really about. Finding that peace, finding that direction in your life, then you're going to be happier and you're going to emanate happiness. You're going to create happiness around you. So I'm going to do a bit of an experiment today. Let's see how it goes. I'm going to pick 3 subtopics, like explaining different areas of peace, and I'll get my mate Khalid to pick one that he finds interesting. So number 1 is peace is what we really need, which is deep happiness. Number 2, peace is contentment, which is not boring. It's realizing how rich you already are. And number 3, peace is completing the puzzle of your life, knowing why you are here and how to live. So I like that puzzle idea. I hear that often when I hear convert interviews. Like, I feel like the missing piece of the puzzle is just arrived when I came to Islam. So what kind of seems interesting to you out of those 3, Khalid?
The third one.
Cool.
Yep, yep. That's
All right.
mm,
So, I mean, your wife's a convert, mine's a convert, and maybe we've got an idea of what that means, because that's where I kind of hear those kind of words
mm,
from. Um, and so my few ideas are something like, without Islam, we're lost. And I find that that's why I really enjoy convert interviews, like the whole journey of like, I don't know where I was
Mm.
going, what to do in my life, sort of thing. And there's so many questions about not just like existential questions, like why are we here, but also like how do you relate to, how do we make the world a better place, and all these kind of things. So without that, we're really rubbish at relationships, family, marriage, neighbors, social, world issues, or like we seem to be on the verge of World War III
Mm.
again, kind of thing, right? We're not very good at figuring things out ourselves, right? So um we're terrible at being one with nature. We've got environmental issues. So there's a million pieces of the puzzles that we're really rubbish at. And so um, when you get these answers that we think are impossible, like what's the meaning of life, and they become so obvious and apparent through Islam and even other religions, you feel like, it's Islam is the missing piece of the puzzle. If it, I don't know if that makes sense. So, what are your thoughts about it?
One of the things, if I may, like you said, a lot of people, especially converts, they said, like you quite rightly mentioned, they do say that, oh look, we had questions, and if I may talk about my wife's particular case, she said, how she had questions. He was always a curious child, and she asked a lot of people. She grew up in a Catholic school. She asked, the people there questions about life, about religion, and the questions weren't fulfilled. She would then turn to uh, some of the scholars in the mosques, in the local mosques. Again, they couldn't answer. Family members couldn't answer the questions that she had. And then when she saw the channel, MTA channel, the international channel,
So,
this,
we're part of an international Muslim community, and we
yes,
have our own TV channel and even radio channel, which Carl is part of.
mm,
Yeah, go on.
yes, exactly. So the Muslim Television Ahmadiyya channel, it's a Sky channel, and so she found that there were various question answer programs uh, relating to everyday life, everyday worries, everyday questions that people had. And she found then that these questions were being asked. And like you said, you're asking me which is the most interesting one for me. And like I said, the third one is the most interesting one for me because if for those people who are not aware, there's a book written by the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, may Allah have mercy on him, peace be upon him, and his book wrote a book called The Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam. So this is what this is a question that's shone out for me because in his book he talks about the development of the soul, and there's three stages of the man's soul, and if I'm just going to bring up that information now. So there's the three states of the soul. The first state of the soul is man's is the first soul, which is called the nafsi amara, the self that incites to evil. So this is the soul where people just react, without thinking. They
The
just
animal.
the animal exactly. Just people just go. They just use their basic instincts. And it's something that there's no reflection done, and everything that is done is just done maybe out of anger or something, and so that's called the soul, the self that incites to evil. And I think a lot of us, when we were looking for religion or looking for peace, we start off that because we've always got this anxiety about, oh, where are we going to get money from, how are we going to pay this bill, oh, I need to get to work on time, and there's all these other stresses, and of course, like you said, there's so many questions that you have, but then your soul is not at rest. Your soul is forever jumping up and down. This is what I refer to as the soul. Now, as you start, reflecting, the second source is called the nafse lawama, which is the reproving self. This is the soul that starts reflecting, and you start questioning.
So I try to dumb things down. So
Yeah.
reproving means the thing that tells you off. Like it's a bit posh word. I don't normally use the word
Sorry. So,
reprove.
so,
No,
so
you
yeah,
don't need to apologize.
yeah,
I like to keep things so simple that anybody
yeah,
gets it, sort of thing. So it's the
exactly.
soul that kind of tells you off, and I describe it as a conscience.
Exactly. Perfect. Perfect. So it's kind of it's the soul that reflects, and you do self reflection, and you analyze yourself, and you analyze your actions, and analyze your goals. And this is like, for me, this is the journey that the soul takes. So when I'll get to the final part in a second, but when you're talking about pieces completing the puzzle of your life, when you get to the final stage now, the final stage is called the third source, which is the nafse mutmaina, the soul at rest. You know,
Yeah.
so when that puzzle is put into place, then your soul is at rest. But if you look at what the Caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community says, may Allah strengthen his hand, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad,
The
he says,
worldwide spiritual leader. Yeah.
yeah, he's the
Yep.
worldwide spiritual leader of the community, global Caliph, and you know, in all his speeches, and especially at the beginning, when he had just become a caliph, he had spoken about how people need to self-analyze, need to reflect on themselves. Why's it gone red?
Oh, it just means time's. I told you time runs out really
Oh,
quickly.
good.
But
Okay.
go on, finish off your point
Yeah.
while I'm
So,
copy
yeah.
pasting.
So the soul at rest is the soul that, you know, this is the soul, or this is your stage of your life where you got trust in God. And believe you me, we all have, we all not always perfect Muslims or Christians or whatever religion, but your soul always goes in waves. And so I've found that in my life as well, giving Paris an example, when I've been initially, like at one stage when I was thinking and worrying about things, and then you sort of turn to people and ask for people for help, which is not a bad thing. You can do that, but then you see that people will help you, but sometimes reluctantly, and sometimes they'll be bearing a grudge. And then when you go to God and just say, God, please, I trust in you. I'm in a difficult situation. Your soul feels so peaceful.
Don't touch your mic though.
Oh,
It's
sorry.
it's all right. I know.
Your soul feels so peaceful
Yeah.
that you don't need to go anywhere else. And then I just said to myself, oh, Khalid, you're such a verg. Just turn to God, because He
Yeah.
provides. He's the provider of everything. So it's very simple, it's simplistic, but for me, that's the journey of the soul. And when you get to that stage, and I'm not saying you're perfect, you're always learning and developing, and soul goes, like I said, your faith goes up and down, the iman, the faith goes up and down. So then when you have that trust in God, and you just bow down your head and say, look, He's the one that provides. He's the one that will look after you. And it's been so many occasions. If I can just quickly just say one story, I
Go on.
remember one time I was a student and I was looking for some part-time work, and I went out for a few different interviews and came back home, and it was a little bit late in the afternoon, so I was combining my prayers. That's my excuse, which you can do sometimes. So I was combining my prayers. So I said the first four. This is Zohar and Asr prayers, the afternoon
The middle.
prayers.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I said my first four rakats, first four prayers, right? And then I got a phone call from one of the people I went to see, offered me a job. And I said, look, I'll call you back later. I'm just busy. And then I did my second part of my prayers, which is the Asr prayers, right? The later part of the afternoon. And then again, I got another phone call. So the thing is, if you make your effort, so you can't just sit down on sit down and think, oh, everything's going to come to me. But you trust in God and you make the effort that way. So you meet Him halfway, and then He comes and helps you.
Yep.
Mm.
So that is basically peace when you're not. So basically, I'm trying to summarize what
Mm.
you basically said. So the word Islam, one of the meanings is to let go of your ego, to
Yes.
submit your ego, and that's what this nafs mutmainna thing is. This is like when you remove yourself and then you go directly to God because that's what you truly
Mm.
want. Okay, and I say it's supposed to be all logical. So one thing I'll say to you, just like Khalid, this Khalid did, he tried to trust in God, and then you'll see it works. And the more you trust in God, the more it works. Let that be a scientific experiment, sort of thing. And the other thing is, why should you believe that? Also, in the philosophy of the teaching of Islam, is our innate uh, love for God, which you might not realize, but why are we attracted to nature and so many things like that, right? Okay, it's our inner love for God. Like what's so special about some seas, just a bunch of water? It's unobstructed nature, and we love that. So there's all these hints that we do have an attraction to God. So I don't know if I'm over prolonging it. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so inner peace, how do we get inner peace? That's a pretty important question, right? So again, a quote, because I don't want this stuff to be from me. I want it to be from ancient spiritual teaching. So this is from Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And just a simple bit of wisdom, I think. Anything which brings you peace of mind and contentment of heart is good. Anything which disturbs the mind and troubles the heart is sinful, even though it might be held lawful by jurists. So basically, that's a posh way of saying, like, even if it's with the law or against the law, even if it's acceptable in the law, but it's that you feel bad about it, just don't do it, because that's gonna lead you away from inner peace. It's a really simple, and I think some of these ideas in Islam sound so obvious, but the funny thing is we don't do these
Mm,
really obvious things. And Islam and all religious teachings, they shouldn't be making you do things like kind of like you don't disagree with. So it's good that it's obvious in a
mm,
way, right? Okay, so my quick explanation, I have a little commentary there. Our conscience can guide us towards good. Don't let it be confused by cultural norms. So, if you feel bad about drinking alcohol, you know, try, avoid it even though it's normal, right? You'll find Islam in line with your conscience, so show you your conscience the path to happiness. So your conscience doesn't know the answers to all the questions. It's kind of a very limited view, right? But when it's faced with two options, you're deep down, you know what's good and bad, right? But if you're given a path and Islam says, do this, and you go, is that good or bad? You ask your conscience and it will tell you, right? So anyway, here's your three choices. Number one, Islam makes life feel like a completed puzzle, kind of going back to the puzzle idea. Number
mm.
two, Islam grounds us in truths which awakens a sense of luckiness. So I'm not going to go into explain that. If it kind of piques your interest, we can talk about that one. And then number three, Islam lights the way to a better future. So again, if Khalid doesn't pick the thing you're interested in, by the way, you can in the chat say whatever you want, take part. Um, but if Khalid doesn't pick this Khalid doesn't pick the one that you're interested in, there are summary comments, blah blah. But Khalid, what do you think? What are you going to go for?
Mm, I think the example about the puzzle again
Cool. Okay.
sticks out for me because uh, when you are searching, see the thing because I tell you, put it in simplistic terms,
Hmm.
as I would explain it. So in people sometimes say that Islam. Let's talk about Islam. Islam is an archaic religion. It's a religion that should be kept back in the 1400s or whatever. All those ancient times, and it's not something that's relevant to us now. But the reason I would say that Islam makes me feel like a completed puzzle is that you're forever searching for answers of happiness, and this is where you when you get inner peace. Uh, but by following the teachings of Islam and trying your best in your best ability, we're not going to say we're all like imams. We're not. We're all different. But that's the beauty of Islam. Allah doesn't judge two people the same way. Allah has love for everyone as individuals, right? And He's so forgiving. We've done so many. If you read in the Quran, there's so many times it says that Allah forgives, Allah forgives, Allah forgives. No matter how many times people wrong themselves, and that's the thing, it says in the Quran, when you're wronging someone, you're not actually wronging someone, you're wronging your soul. You
Yeah.
know, so that's then if you
Don't
do
do
have a
the don't do the tapping. I know it feels natural, but
yeah,
I can go.
excuse me.
It's all right.
So then your conscience will tell you, something's not quite right. And so let's just talk for example, very briefly about the expenses in House of Commons, right? So these MPs know, or everyone knows, quite apparent, that they're getting a good salary, but then you're claiming 30, 40 pounds for meals, taxi rides, and so on. So it's lawful, but like you said, but is it moral? Is it morally right? You know. See,
That's
I
right.
I compare it to like food. Food is like one of my favorite subjects, right? See, you can have food. People always go on about having halal. Food, that means meat that's been slaughtered in the Islamic way, right? Islamic tradition. But if you go to a shop, for me, it's simple. You go to a shop or to a restaurant that's halal, but it is really dirty, and you can question the hygiene. Then next door you have a shop that's I hate to do this, but not halal, right? But it is clean. You have to. Islam is a religion that gives everyone choice. So look,
Oh, I see what you
you
mean.
have right and wrong, but it's up to you to make the choice. And then your soul, like you said, your soul will tell you what's better. So
Yeah,
you have to have halal food, but you have to have tayyib food as well, which means it's clean,
pure. Yeah,
your
yeah,
food.
yeah.
So I would go
And
there.
the whole
Yeah.
point of halal is supposed to be good for you. So if it's like a horrible cockroaches or whatever
Oh,
place, it's probably not going to be good for you.
definitely not.
So you got to make a bit of a choice there. Yeah, cockroaches or killed properly. I don't know. All right. So that's I really appreciate that. Was really nice explanation there. So on to outer peace. So let me copy paste that one. You don't really hear about outer peace, I suppose, but it's kind of like, and I kind of did. My question
Mm,
is outer peace a thing? As that's kind of a weird joke. Okay, it's my geeky joke, right?
mm,
Basically, people don't really say outer peace, do they? I don't know if they do, but the idea is, it's like how can you have inner peace if you're in conflict with everybody around you, and not even just people, like with the environment,
mm,
right? How can you have that outer peace? So that's kind of that very important part of what peace means, and actually a fundamental part of what peace means in Islam as well, right? So let me read the quote. People would fare well or do well so long as they safeguard themselves against envy and rancor, which I translated to hate. Okay, so if you try to keep away from envy and hate, the society will do well. And you're like, that sounds a bit simple. But anyway, commentary is we think conflict is complicated, like, oh, vax versus anti-vax and Black Lives Matter and all this kind of stuff. There's so much conflict, right?
mm,
And we think it's really complicated. We have really academic and complicated discussions about it. But if we at least start or agree with the idea that envy and hate are bad things, and hopefully that's not a hard thing to agree on,
mm,
right? That would naturally make us reasonable towards each other. And so the idea of being reasonable towards each other, we use our reason so we can actually listen to each other rather than just talking at each other, like in Houses of Parliament, where it's like one
mm,
person says something, the other person says something, and they kind of just ignore each other, right? And
mm,
you get nowhere. So, anyway, here are your three choices, Khalid.
mm,
Envy destroys connection. Okay. What does connection mean? Well, we can see if you want. Number two, hate fertilizes tribalism. So I'd explain it a little bit. It's like you versus them, and you get into a group, and the other person gets in a group, and all that kind of stuff. So hate fertilizes tribalism, the cause of modern broken societies. And number three, the environment is dying because of insanity caused by envy. What piques your interest, Khalid? It's like a game show.
mm. Um, I quite like the third one actually. The environment is dying because of insanity caused by envy. So
Cool.
what I understand, if I
Yeah.
might,
Yeah, yeah.
so what I understand from that is that the environment around us, it's funny actually on this radio station, the Voice of Islam is called. So the Voice of Islam radio station, we're discussing this morning. We're saying how we're talking about deforestation. It was yesterday, excuse me, on Wednesday show, and they were saying that deforestation is happening because there's a big demand by Western nations, and in particular, there's like a big supermarket chain that buys lots of its meat chicken, poultry, pork from there. You know,
Yeah.
so what they do, the place is leveled. All the trees, unfortunately, are leveled so that they can have more cattle breeding on there to supply the demand here. Now, this is I find so confusing, so perplexing, so annoying as well. Makes me really angry. Something that I'm really passionate about is that in this country you have high levels of hopelessness, right? You have large numbers of food banks opening, and more. Yep. And then on the other side, you have people that are more and more cases of diabetes, people that get type two
Yeah.
diabetes, right? So
Yeah.
there's this dilemma.
And that diabetes is caused by eating too much meat a lot of the time.
Exactly,
Yeah.
by having a poor diet, and
Yeah.
then on top of that, you got huge wastage of food supplies, and you know that a lot of we all know this. We're not ignorant. We all know nowadays that there's so many restaurants, supermarkets that are just throwing away perfectly good items.
Yeah.
But you see, what's good about some stores now? They have there's one in particular. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention their name. Can I mention it? No.
I don't
Doesn't
know.
matter. Anyway,
Yeah.
so they have a thing from 7 to 9 p.m. in the evening. Towards the
Yeah.
end of the day, they close at 10 p.m.
Oh, mention their name. Go on.
Okay, it's
That's
Lidl.
little.
So
Yeah.
they from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. They have every day an opportunity for people to go and buy stuff that's been there, like
That's so good.
yeah.
Yeah.
So rather than throwing it away, I
Yeah.
remember a few
But
restaurants.
I want to quickly butt in, but
Yeah.
because we want to explain the envy idea, and
Yes.
I think you were getting at it, but then I'm not sure what happened. But
Yeah.
the idea is, but it was like
Yeah.
because I felt like you were gonna explain it, but
Yes.
maybe you did. But it
Yes.
was
So.
like
Mm,
we envy the reason we in the West, let's
mm,
especially we buy so much stuff that we don't need, and the reason
mm.
why we do it is we're competing with the Joneses, as it were. We're
Right.
just getting more and more stuff we just don't need, right? And so that would save the environment because it
Mm.
makes us insane to competing to get more and more materialistic things that are necessary, and then we dig up the the earth for more and more minerals and food and destroy it.
Exactly,
And yeah.
exactly. No, because the overall, I think the overall crux of the matter, the overall point I was trying to raise was that there's the issue of wastage, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is that you can go to anywhere in the UK, right? Never mind any other countries, anywhere in the UK, you will see on Boxing Day. For this is a good example. Watch next time, right? Boxing Day, yeah, or after Black Friday sales, there are so many perfectly good TVs, wardrobes, furniture that are chucked out and not even given to charity, which is at least a nice thing to do, but they're just chucked out on the street for the recycle people to pick up or the bin men to pick up, but they're perfectly good. But just because it's the latest TV, they have to have
Mm,
that TV, and like you said, keeping up with the Joneses, and this thing is a chase after money, really,
yeah.
and this is again where you know you should be happy with what you have.
Yeah.
In Islam it says that rather than looking at someone that has more than you, look at someone that has less than you.
That is so brilliant. It's so simple.
It's so simple, exactly.
But
But to
yeah.
put that into practice and do, this
Yeah.
is why our beloved Caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the global Caliph, in his Friday sermons, so often, and the previous ones did this as well, they repeat the subject because us as humans, we're stupid and we forget
Yeah,
so
we
easily.
under if like to say we're stupid is actually what psychologists would tell us.
Mm,
We're so easy manipulated
mm,
by the things we see. So that's why, like, you might think it's really simple to stop looking at the people who've got more than you, but as soon as you start, like, we get incited by that. We say, "Oh my God, that person's got that thing. I
mm,
need to have it." Like, you
mm,
don't need to have
mm.
it, right? But as soon as you kind of look the other way and you say, "Oh, look at that person who's got less than me. Oh my God, I feel so rich."
Mm,
Your brain is so easily manipulated, and
exactly.
manipulate your own brain, therefore.
Exactly, exactly, and I know people like friends, some friends, and they say to me like, "Oh, Holly, why don't you get a car like this, a car like this?" And that's like, my car It's perfectly good car. It's a solid car. I've been all around the UK with it. It's my little Blue Thunder. It's a small car, right? But I don't need to get a car to what for to impress you. I said no. I didn't say that to him, but
Yeah.
the point is I'm at peace with what I have.
Yeah.
You don't need to be envious of what everyone
And
else has.
there's a great thing about materialism, and in the Quran it describes it as a mirage, where like a mirage, you only see it looks like water in the distance, but when you get to it, it's not
Mm,
really there, and so you go in a crazy cycle chasing one mirage after the other, which is just called materialism. So
mm,
cool. Let's get on to the next question. Again, anybody can ask questions, but these are the questions I've lined up. Um, but we can change these questions if anybody's got a question out there. But anyway, this is what I've got. Question one I've got is, how can you talk about things you're not a specialist in? So I get these kind of questions. It's like, how can I talk about psychology? How
mm,
can I talk about science and all these kind of things? I'm not like an expert in it. Like, who are
mm,
you to talk about? And I think they're good questions. They're really important. Okay.
mm,
So if people don't ask questions, then it gets left and people have so many doubts. And it's good to ask those questions. So always welcome them. Anyway, so acquire. So here's another quote from Prophet Muhammad: acquire knowledge, and for the sake of knowledge, acquire dignity and peace of mind, and be humble and respectful towards your teacher. So you might say, how on earth, what's that got to do with, you know, the question? Okay, and the commentary which is relevant is, what stops people from understanding is lack of calmness, which often leads to arrogance. I know it all syndrome. Maybe I should have
mm,
put that in quotes, right? Okay. So, what my experience is, the people who say that to me, um, they come from a place of anger, and that, or the lack of peace or something in themselves, and then that breeds a sort of arrogance. So that's kind of, and then like the arrogance, and we're all arrogant. I'm arrogant in my own ways. Well, I'm always trying to calm down and reduce that arrogance, right? So it's not like a necessarily an insult, right? And then you feel like you know it all, which nobody knows it all, right? So that's kind of explanation of that. And anyway, number one, here are your choices, Khalid,
mm.
and anybody out there if they want. Experts are always behind God's guidance. Okay, that's one idea. Number two, game changers. So that's kind of, I'm an entrepreneur besides a teacher, and so a game changer is like somebody who really changes the world, like really shifts things, right? Think of an Elon Musk or something, right? So game changers are mostly not experts. And number three, prove me wrong, right? So I'm always happy for people to say, this thing you said, therefore it's wrong. And it's possible I could say every now and then I could say something wrong, but so far I haven't seen anybody actually, including the people who kind of confronted me. They've never actually managed to prove me wrong in anything I've said so far. So far so good. But anyway, any thoughts? Which one do you feel like talking about?
Oh, um, I don't know. I really don't. I think I would say number two, game changers are mostly not experts. So if you want to talk about uh, sort of
Elon
lot,
or
no, well,
somebody
let's
else?
say to startup businesses,
Yeah,
right? Over the COVID period, when when COVID began and lockdown began, there was a big rise, in lots of people turning to different means and ways to, make money and to make a living, essentially, right? And you saw that a lot of these people never had experience in what they did, but they learned a new skill. So when you go to this beautiful quote by the Holy Prophet, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, and acquire knowledge, and with that, you see people are humble enough to say, "Oh, okay, I'm not a specialist in this field, or I don't know about this particular topic, but I'm going to learn about it and then generate income from it." So this is what I think is nice, that game changers, like you say, they're not experts. None of us are, but when it comes to all subjects, right? A lot
yeah.
of people are experts in the particular field. But do you know, one of the questions that you raised at the beginning, when you said, how can you, the question that was asked to you, how can you talk about things you are not a specialist in, right? And you say to me, you said that it comes from people that are are saying it from a place of anger. But interestingly enough, I think it also comes from people that are envious because they perhaps think, oh, in some ways
I
there's
think
some,
I've noticed that. Yeah.
yeah, there's some jealousy there as well,
Yeah.
because sometimes people are genuinely happy, for the progress that you make in your life, or what seems to be progress, or what makes you happy makes them happy. So whatever makes
Yeah.
you happy, Khalid, makes me happy.
Sure.
Well,
Yeah.
but some people don't see that. They will say to you, "Oh, what you're doing is not right. Why are you talking about this subject? You're not a specialist."
Yeah.
But believe me, dear viewers, our brother Khalid is a specialist
Uh,
and an expert.
thank you.
No worries. No, but it's true
Yeah.
though. I think more often than not, this is comes from a place. The people that say negative comments like this, for me, it's a negative comment because they say you're not a specialist in it, but they themselves are perhaps jealous that they didn't have the initiative or the brains to do what you're doing. Right. That's the first thing. The second thing is, they sometimes they might not have contentment in their life, so they might not have inner peace. So
Yeah.
they're just kind of lashing out and saying, "Oh, you got this," and even though materialistically they might have a bigger house, 2 cars, 3 cars, if it pleases them, 100 kids, whatever makes people happy, right?
Yeah.
But I think in general, most people want the same thing. They just want, a house and security and a family and inner peace and happiness, right?
Mm.
And I think sometimes if people do say this comment, it's because they themselves are not happy. But
Mm.
then also there's that, like I said, there's that element of jealousy
Sure.
in it. Yeah.
And also the idea that if you think you're the expert who knows it all, any
Mm,
good expert knows they don't know it all. Like if
mm,
you're studying nature, as soon as you learn one thing, you go, oh my gosh, there's a million other things I don't know. So
mm,
nobody is really a proper expert. But one of the things that have limited people in the past, and there's so many great examples of it,
mm,
okay, is that when you think you're the expert, you think this is how it works. And
mm,
then people who come from outside, they're the ones that go, actually, there's another way. And it's not within the limited boundaries that you've been living in or thinking in. So
mm,
that's why a lot of the times game changers are people who are from outside. So, quick few example, Einstein's a really easy example. So, literally, he was rejected for about 4 years when he came with some of the greatest theories of all time. Okay, just because he was a nobody. And the people who were judging him were also like Nobel Prize winners like Max Planck. He was like, who's Einstein? Don't know him. What's his job? Oh, he's a patent clerk. Like, what's that? That's some
mm,
rubbish job, right? And so for years, he was like really miserable. Einstein was really miserable. Like, why is nobody listening to me? This is maths. It's straightforward, right? You
mm.
can't just say because I'm a nobody, the maths doesn't add up. It adds up every single time, right? So there's so many examples and modern examples. Elon Musk, like, what's he doing making rockets better than all the rockets that NASA ever made, right? And he's not
Mm.
the expert. He just read a few books and had a go, right? Okay, became an expert. But there's so many examples, and because I'm an entrepreneur, I read into these fantastic stories, and it's usually people who come with a different perspective and not limited by this idea of what an expert is.
Do you know this is so interesting what you mentioned because recently saw a video about Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was giving a speech somewhere, and he said, what makes a person a true champion? They said, how do have you? People were asking, how come you achieve so much? He said, the true test of a person's character is um, not how many times they get knocked down or rejected, but how many times you get up. So,
Yeah, I
like,
heard that
I
one.
think it was Michael Jordan or Shaquille O'Neal or LeBron James. One, it was a
Yeah,
basketball player, and he recently said same thing, something as well. And one of them was saying how you know people say he's done so many slam dunks,
slam dunks. Yeah, yeah,
but he said, "Do you know how many I missed
yeah,
before I started achieving those?" But it's also practice and it's also learning. So people don't get to where they are without having sacrificed a lot, and works hard at what they do. So it might look like, some people from the outside say, "Oh, I haven't seen this person for a year or 6 months, and look where he is now." And
yeah,
so then they'll say, that jealousy sort of comes in there.
yeah. Yeah, and this kind of, I think he kind of hinted at this another idea, which it sounds a bit weird, but I like to explain it. It's like acquiring knowledge is different to having knowledge. And you'd be like, oh, what's he talking about, right? It's this idea of looking out for the truth rather than thinking you already have the truth. When you think you already have the truth, your eyes are closed. When you're acquiring knowledge, when you're
Mm.
looking for knowledge, your eyes are open. And it's especially important when it terms of inner peace and things like that. When you're looking for the truth, your eyes are open and you start seeing it. But if you think you know it all, you learn nothing.
You know, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful way to end that particular segment.
Thank you. Khalid has always been the best at compliments ever since I've known him for about last 25 years, so appreciate it. I'm not talking about myself though. I'm talking about this Khalid. Yeah. All right. So I got another question. Again, if you got questions in the chat, we can change these questions, okay? But anyway, this is what I've got. So I try to pick things that would be particularly interesting for Khalid because he's how do you describe it? Social carer, or something like that?
Support worker in social care, yes.
Yeah. So he
Yeah.
care for people like elderly or something?
Yes, mainly
Yeah.
elderly people, vulnerable adults. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, and I thought let's try to pick up like something that might be something to debate about, and he doesn't have to agree with me either, right? So, question is, and as if you've been watching the news, especially in the UK, social care has been basically forced to take the vaccine. Is that right?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So should we be freed from vaccine mandates? Mandates means like making it mandatory or being forced to take vaccines. We're talking about the COVID vaccine, or is it a responsibility? And so I'm going to again quote for something, and it might not be obvious why it's relevant, but we'll see in a second. So, if your neighbors praise you, you are good. If your neighbors say you're bad, you're bad. Okay, so what's that got to do with vaccines at all, right? So, again, and I often think the problem is not the obvious problem; is usually something deeper, and that's what this is referring to. So, commentary, there's keyboard warriors, as in people who's online being mean to each other and
Mm.
trying to outdo each other in debates, right? Okay, online. And I even find this, I'm tempted to be more rude online than I might be with a person directly, right? So some sort of weird thing about the internet, right? So keyboard warriors are self-rated. Self-rated. I think I mixed up the word, but anyway, it's like I was going to say self-righteous, and I mixed up the word because I kept on changing it. Right. So they're sort of self-righteous, and they divide society. It's time to join the real world and get other people's opinions. So this thing here is about neighbors, and it's not about you saying you're good. Right. It's about the neighbors telling you you're good. And the true quality of a person often is described by how nice they actually are, not just all the ideas they have in their heads. It's a bit complicated, I think, my way of explaining things. But I think sometimes social media encourages sort of aggressive, uh, tribal debate rather than being connected with each other, and that way of thinking doesn't resolve problems. I kind of talked about this earlier on this show. Like this kind of being nice and loving actually gets people to listen to each other and actually resolve problems. But anyway, number one, COVID vaccines don't reduce spread, so why the mandate? Okay, number two, spiritual leaders can have made scientific mistakes, including the Khalifa. So we've been talking about that, and this is quite, I think, a big issue amongst our Muslim community. So do your own research. And number three, since Omicron, the pandemic is over, and I'm thinking we might have a debate here. We'll see. Let's see. Which one are you going to go for?
Um, okay, so
Is it one
I
scary one, the
no,
middle
no,
one?
no,
Go on.
I categorically
Yeah.
disagree with your comment. The number two,
Yeah.
which is that spiritual leaders can and have made scientific
So I think
mistakes.
that should be the one we discussed, therefore.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So,
So
so
yeah.
we,
Go on. Go
so,
on. You
so,
you go first.
thank you. So I'm just going to say very briefly. So as
Yeah.
a person that works in social care, we like I said, we're out in the field and we meet lots of different people. We use public transport most of the time when I'm not using my car to visit people, and we go. I work also part of the time in the hospital as well, right? So
Yeah.
I have contact with so many different people that can be carrying so many different things. But again, um, I have to have responsibility, not just as
Are we talking
a.
about number two or number one, or is it kind of related?
It's kind of related to
Kind of
number two.
related, isn't it? Okay,
Yeah,
fine. Let's do both. Yeah, yeah. Fair enough.
yeah, because we're talking about the question: should we be free from vaccine mandates, or is it a responsibility?
Yeah.
So my question, my take on it
Yeah.
is that it's a responsibility for me, but not just a responsibility; it's a moral duty. I feel as a Muslim that we are here to. Our motto of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is love for all, hatred for
Yeah.
none. So I think it's conflicting that I would go out to help unless it was there was an underlying
So
medical
my
condition.
point is going to be,
Yeah,
before you go any further, is
yeah,
that the vaccines don't work, and there's plenty of evidence for that,
right. Okay.
and it's
So
really easy to prove that. But anyway, go on,
yeah,
and I'll
so
prove it to you and see if you can counter the logic in a second.
I'll
Go
try
for it.
my best.
Yeah,
But the point I was going to make was that um, I have a moral duty to make sure that I'm protected, but I have to protect my family as well and protect the people that I'm caring for. Now,
absolutely agreed. Yeah,
so that's one aspect of it. But for me, as a Muslim, and especially as an Ahmadi Muslim, uh, we have a spiritual leader, and I think there's no point in having a leader if you're not going to listen to him.
sure.
And he's has advised us, uh, you know, to have the vaccine.
Yeah.
So for me,
So
it's plain simple. I'll have the
yeah.
vaccine. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So quickly, this is even according to, this is going to be fun, right?
Yeah.
According to even people who support the vaccine. So the
Yes.
other day, Bill Gates, big fan of the vaccines, right? Um, he was saying he's really sad, right? And we were wondering, why is he sad, right? And he said, unfortunately, there's a what we call a negative correlation between the number of people. The more you take the vaccine in countries where they've got more vaccines
Mm,
taken,
mm,
there's actually higher prevalence of COVID. So if you look at the map, this is official data, World Health Organization, ONS, and whatever, right?
mm,
Okay, you'll see Africa, which has got least amount of vaccines taken, have got the least problem with COVID,
mm.
right? But if you go to America, UK, wherever the higher the number of people taking the vaccines, the more prevalence of COVID. How do you explain that?
I do not know how to explain that, but going to try and revert back to my point.
Yeah,
For me, I consider myself a quite a simple person.
yeah,
So I don't always see things in black and white. I try to,
sure.
uh, but for me, there's my trust in my caliph, right? That he's a man of God. For me, he's a man of God,
Yeah,
and therefore he has wisdom. And if he
yeah,
has wisdom, he's a representative on the earth of God Almighty. You know.
yeah,
So for me, you know, it you see things change, and sometimes people might say, "Oh, what he said is it's incorrect." I believe, I'm touching my mic again. I believe hand on heart
that's all right.
that what he says, is right because he's guided by God.
Sure.
Mm,
Okay. So my quick response is, just so you're aware. So the Khalifa has been changing his point of view
mm,
at different times,
mm.
but a lot of people don't know that because they just watch the short clips, right?
Yeah.
That's one point. But also, he said things like you can get vitamin D through windows. So you can get so sunlight is supposed to be provide vitamin D
Mm,
if it's unobstructed. So if there's a window in the way, you can't. It's just a medical fact, right?
mm,
So he said that, right? So I personally
mm,
get lots and lots of wisdom from the Khalifa, and I listen to him and apply it in all these shows, right?
mm,
But am I going to stop believing in him just because of one thing? So if I asked him, for example, the square root of 10, which is a long decimal number, he's not a human calculator. Just because he gets that wrong, it's not a big deal. And there's also the example of Prophet Muhammad, who also made an error in some farming issue relating to, how to deal with palm groves, right? So there's already evidence that he hasn't been 100% correct on the science. And I just want to quickly, so my friend Shah Jahan says, before the vaccine was rated, Africa had less COVID deaths and cases, and therefore it's not relevant. That's not really, I don't see that's an argument. So this is a pandemic, which everybody took vaccines for
Mm.
because they were scared it's going to spread. So how comes it didn't spread in Africa? I don't see the answer in that comment. But anyway, you have the final say, please, Khalid.
Oh, I was just going to say was,
Yeah,
you know, a lot of it is to trust in Allah. You know, we were talking about the trusting God, and I think when you release, I'm not saying this about you, but I would say
yeah,
when you release a little bit of your ego
yeah,
and you turn fully to God and trust in God and trust in His Khalifa, then I promise you, my soul feels at rest that I know my Khalifa is guiding me. If the decision is wrong, so be it. You know, but I know that we go to a spiritual leader. He's here to lead us, so follow him.
sure. And also, Hazur asked somebody spoke to Hazur directly. We had a show last time, and Hazur said this is not Sharia, which means a fixed part of the law. Just as
Yes,
my advice, sort of thing, from my own research. So,
exactly.
anyway,
Yeah,
yeah,
just one final point.
yeah. Go
Again,
on. You say the final point.
what people need. Sorry, I'm so sorry to say,
Yeah.
and
No,
people
no.
need to
You go
know
for it.
Islam
Yeah,
is a religion of choice.
yeah,
You're given the options A or B, and it's up to you to choose red pill, blue
yeah.
pill. It's up to you. So it's your own choices. So do not go blame anyone else later. You know.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, that
Mm,
there's no force there. At the end of the day,
yeah.
this is good, hopefully good advice. But
Exactly
yeah,
as it says in the Holy Quran, there is no compulsion in religion
yeah.
as it should be.
So I think that's really important for a lot of people who worry about like organized religion and people bossing them around, because that's kind of a problem in the West.
Mm.
People kind of got a bit worried about that. So that's not an issue in Islam. Anyway, so question 3: why do people suffer from loneliness despite being in continuous contact with people? So we're in London, and London has a massive problem with loneliness. It's so weird because it's so tightly packed together, and then there's social media. We're constantly WhatsApping each other and stuff like that. Okay, and this is again. I'm trying to pick a fight with Khalid as best I can, but we'll see what happens, right? On all sorts of weird issues, right? And he's like, "Hang on a minute, what's this got to do with me?" Maybe it's like, but but if you think back how anyway, I'll introduce it in a second. Maybe you understand in a minute, right? So a seeker after knowledge amongst the ignorant is a living person among the dead. And again, you'd be like, what's that got to do with anything? Right? Okay. So, commentary. Seeking knowledge is different from having knowledge. Seeking knowledge is the humility mindset that keeps your eyes wide open to what you do not know, and so makes you aware of what makes you truly alive. So, again, you still might not know what I'm talking about. What's this got to do with loneliness, right? So, but hopefully you start becoming apparent from the points. So, number one, psychologists tell us that we need to be deep to be happy. So, just to roughly explain what's going on so far in the intro to this question, is that we as human beings think the world works in a certain way. But as soon as you start studying something like psychology, you'll be amazed that we're completely different to who we think we are. Like I can, for example, tell you that this is one of the biggest proofs in psychology that it's very easy to get somebody to kill somebody. Just as if you're wearing a lab coat, and that's what happened in Nazi Germany. It wasn't that Germans were bad, it was very easy to manipulate people, and we can talk about how that's easily done, right? Okay, and so we also don't know what makes people happy. Okay, we think that, let's say, small talk keeps people happy, but it's actually deep talk that actually keeps people happy. So that's kind of, I've gone into that number one too much now. Number two, fear of God removes fear from everyone and expressing ourselves. So we have a massive problem with fearing expressing ourselves, and that's why we're so lonely despite being surrounded by people. So that's number two. And number three, materialists are addicted to individualism, so are doomed to be disconnected. Which one do you find interesting? And Shah Jahan, if you got a pick, you pick maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Pick before Khalid. Quick, quick,
Please
quick,
do,
quick.
please do. I'll describe for you. By the way, I would like to do a discussion, a program about this terminology, organized religion. Right, next time, please.
Sure.
That's another
Okay.
show.
That's brilliant.
I got a lot to say
Cool.
about that.
Awesome. I'm loving
uh,
it. That'd be cool. Yeah.
this would need to be deep. Uh,
Ooh, it's good. People are also thinking, which topic
yeah.
will he pick? Which topic would I pick? And doesn't have to be. It could be the one that you don't know anything about. It's like, what the
Mm.
heck? Let's just go for that one.
I think I don't agree with the
Good. Go
first.
for that one.
Yeah. So
Okay.
something that we need to be deep to be happy.
Yes, actually, great. That's the
Mm,
perfect one. Okay, and I didn't explain why,
mm.
how I'm gonna pick a fight with you, Khalid. Right? Okay,
Go for
so what
it.
it is, this is the weirdest thing to pick a fight with, right?
Yeah.
So Khalid was sending me messages the other day, right? He was like, was it good morning or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is the really nice thing to do, right? It's like, how am I going to pick a fight with it? But then I tried to be really awkward. It's like, no, it's not good morning, and then I started going on about it, right? And kind of what I was really playing with right there in that when I was responding was there's a big problem at the moment with deep discussions
Mm,
and the fact that and emojis, and I've talked about this before, they seem harmless, right? And kind of these less mass messaging, right?
mm,
But it doesn't give the time for individual and deep discussion. So emojis, and I see this in all these WhatsApp groups whenever, um, they reduce our expression to caveman levels, and we are really deep people and we need to be deep. So I'll just quickly explain, like, there's one of the greatest psychologists of our time, um, Viktor Frankl, wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, right? Okay, and he basically said it's meaning that makes us happy. That's what psychologists have found, and loads of psychologists have worked from his work, right? So when we think that small talk is good enough, that's actually deadly for our happiness, and that contributes to loneliness. What do you got to say about that?
Do you know? I think sometimes what drives people insane is the overcomplication of things. I'll give you an example. You
Yeah,
get a say you get a flat pack unit from IKEA or other any
sure.
other store, and it's got like a million and one instructions. The best booklets are the ones that keep it simple, right?
Yeah,
So the thing is, if you, for example, um, I'm trying to relate this to your question now. Why
yeah.
do people suffer from loneliness? I think it's that search for the never-ending happiness, but then people try and do it. Sometimes I don't know. They try to do it by it can sometimes be done in a manipulative way, in a bad way. It can be done in a good way as well. Uh, but I think I personally think that we don't need to be deep to be happy. I think life should be simple. This is the thing. People say religion is complicated, religion is archaic, religion is forceful. If you look at Islam, if you look at it properly and scratch more than the surface,
But you
and
didn't prove to me why you don't have to be deep to be happy, even though psychologists say that they do. You
okay,
do, and I
yeah,
can explain it. Even if you're not a psychologist, I can give
yeah.
simple
No, no.
reasons
I,
why.
I, I was I was just going to get to the point that
Yep. Sorry. Go on. Go on.
I'm so sorry. In my sort of layman terms,
No. Go on.
the
Go on.
best I can, the best I can
No. No.
is
Sorry.
that
Go on.
no, no, no. Is just that again when you go back to trusting God. It's as simple as that. People are this ever searching. They have the question, "What is the meaning of life?" And it's summarized beautifully in the Quran that the meaning of life, is to serve our or pray to our God and to look after His creatures. It's as simple as that. It's just two lines.
Yeah, and so most people don't even go that far.
Yeah,
because that's
but
too deep. It's like meaning
mm,
of life. Oh, I can't talk about that. That's a
mm,
ridiculous conversation,
yeah,
right? Let's go. Let's talk about Manchester United or football or something.
yeah. But I think if you just look at what it is, I don't think you need to go deep. For me, when you're saying go deep, it's like having a deep,
So
and
I'm talking about beyond emojis, right?
yeah,
People, I've noticed this in groups. People really share their feelings, and I really worry about that. Like, I'm not. I say I'm going to pick a fight, but I pick a fight for a reason
yeah,
because
sure.
this is deadly for our
Mm.
happiness that we cannot listen to each other, enjoy really good conversations with each other.
I
Go
think
on,
the
you have the
data.
last say. Go
No, I
on.
was just going to say, I think the point you make is valid in the sense that people are dumbing down themselves, that they're not having the time to articulate those words and say those full sentences. Good morning, how are you? And just say good morning and a style. But having said that, I'm going to send you loads of emojis tomorrow. Yeah.
Khalid's the nicest person, right? So it just I thought,
It's
how
out
can
of
I
love.
pick up?
It's
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
love.
that's right. Anyway, so first of all, thank you everybody for watching. If you're watching later on, appreciate it. Um, join, and I've got to thank Khalid the most for just turning up on this show. He's so tired after work, and he's got like a million like responsibilities and stuff like that. So really appreciate that. And it's good to see his face because we haven't talked since the pandemic face
It's
to
been
face. That's
fun.
so cool. And then there's just check out the show next week and please press that like button and we're done. Peace be upon you. Catch you next week. I'll press the